I'm calling to order this meeting. This is an additional meeting of the Committee of the Whole of the Council of the District of Columbia. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chair of the Council and Chair of the Committee of the Whole. Today is Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026. The time is 12:16 in the afternoon. We are in room 500 at the Council Chambers of the Johnny Wilson Building. This is an additional meeting not regularly scheduled, and this meeting will be followed by the regularly scheduled legislative meeting of the council. This meeting is being broadcast on cable channel 13 and is also available on the council's website, www.dccouncil.gov. We begin our committee of the whole meetings, figuring out if we have a quorum. Mr. Cash, would you call the roll?
Chairman Mendelson.
Present.
Councilmember Allen.
Here.
Councilmember Bonds.
Here.
Councilmember Crawford.
Here.
Here.
Councilmember Felder.
Present.
Councilmember Fruman.
Present.
Councilmember Henderson.
Here.
Councilmember Lewis George.
Here.
Councilmember Nadeau.
Here.
Councilmember Parker.
Here.
Councilmember Pinto. Councilmember Pinto.
Present.
Councilmember Robert White.
Present.
Councilmember Trayon White.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Cash. There's several measures, several is putting it loosely, for markup in the committee of the whole. And the first is something like 12 nominations, confirmation of 12 nominations to the Commission on Out-of-School Time Grants and Youth Outcomes. PR 26-460 to confirm the nomination of Stephanie Fu. PR 26-641 to confirm the nomination of Sybil Davis. PR 26-463 to confirm the nomination of Reginald Mathis. PR 26-464 to confirm the nomination of Matthew Hansen. PR 26-465 to confirm the nomination of Leandro Treviso. PR 26-466 to confirm the nomination of Levi Ekman. PR 26-467 to confirm the nomination of Joanne Lamparter. PR 26-468 to confirm the nomination of Janita Finley. PR 26-469 to confirm the nomination of Danielle Schmutz. PR 26-470 to confirm the nomination of Daniela Gugioni. And two more. PR 26-471 to confirm the nomination of Cambridge Worrell Smith. And PR 26-472 to confirm the nomination of Ricardo Cooper. There will be one report for all of these, but the resolutions each need to be moved separately. The purpose of PR 26-460 is to confirm the mayor's nomination of Ms. Stephanie Fu for appointment to the Commission on Out-of-School Time Grants and Youth Outcomes for a term to end November 7th, 2026. The purpose of PR 26-461 is to confirm the mayor's nomination of Ms. Sybil Davis for appointment to the commission to serve a term to end November 7th, 2026. The purpose of PR 26-463 is to confirm the mayor's nomination of Mr. Reginald Mathis for a term to end November 7th, 2028. The purpose of PR 26-464 is to confirm the mayor's nomination to reappoint Mr. Matthew Hansen to the Commission on Out-of-School Time Grants and Youth Outcomes to serve a term to end November 7th, 2026. The purpose of PR 26-465 is to confirm the mayor's nomination of Mr. Leandro Treviso for appointment to serve a term to end November 7th, 2028. The purpose of PR 26-466 is to confirm the mayor's nomination of Mr. Levi Ekman for a term to end November 7th, 2026. The purpose of PR 26-467 is to confirm the reappointment of Ms. Joanne Lamparter to the Commission on Out-of-School Time Grants and Youth Outcomes to serve a term to end November 7th, 2028. Purpose of PR 26-468 is to confirm Ms. Janita Finley for a term to end November 7th, 2028. Purpose of PR 26-469 is to confirm Ms. Danielle Schmutz for a term to end November 7th, 2026. The purpose of PR 26-470 is to confirm Dr. Daniela Bugioni for a term to end November 7th, 2026. The purpose of 26-471 is to confirm the mayor's nomination of Ms. Cambridge Worrell Smith for a term to end November 7th, 2026. And the purpose of PR 26-472 is to confirm the mayor's nomination of Mr. Ricardo Cooper for a term to end November 7th, 2026. The commission is a public body composed of government agency representatives and key community stakeholder constituencies to develop a district-wide strategy for equitable access to high-quality out-of-school time programs for district youth. The commission is also charged with facilitating interagency planning and coordination. It targets grant making, evaluates data, and considers the provision of training, capacity building, and technical assistance to out-of-school time providers. The commission shall consist of no more than 21 members. Currently, only 10 are serving, who represent key community stakeholder constituencies or are district agency administrative heads or their designees. Specifically, 6 are specified agency heads or their designees, which are the Deputy Mayor for Education, the State Superintendent of Education, the DCPS Chancellor, the Executive Director of the Public Charter School Board, the Department of Parks and Recreation Director, and the Director of the Out-of-School Time Office within the Deputy Mayor for Education. In addition, one is a designee of the chairperson of the council committee of jurisdiction, and at least 8 are non-governmental members appointed to 3-year terms by the mayor after council confirmation. The committee report, there's one report for all of these nominations, and the committee report goes into more detail about each of the nominees. These resolutions were introduced at the request of the mayor on December 9th, 2025. The committee of the whole held a public roundtable on all of the nominations on January 16th, 2026. There was no testimony at the hearing in opposition to any of these nominees, and the committee has received no testimony or comments since then in opposition to any of these nominees. Without objection, I will move the resolutions in block with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes.
Mr. Chairman?
Give me just a second. 2, 3. There are 12 resolutions, 460, 461, and 463 through 472 inclusive. Who has to be recognized? Councilmember Crawford.
For PR 26-471, which is K on the agenda, I believe Ms. Cambridge Worrell Smith is a high school student. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to share why youth representation is important to have on this body.
Which number was that?
K. 26-471. And I'm supportive. I just want to, for the public to know that there is a high school student that will be on this commission.
Yes, and this was the mayor's nomination. And at the hearing she presented, there was no issue with her nomination. She's an 11th grade student at Stone Ridge School of the Sacred Heart, fluent in Spanish, conversational in Mandarin, and has participated in global exchange programs, including an environmental sustainability initiative in Costa Rica. Her leadership experience includes serving on the MICFA Youth Council DC, the Safety and Justice Council, and DC Safe, where she has worked on issues ranging from restorative justice to child exploitation prevention. She also interned with the Office of the Attorney General and Senator Edward Markey and serves as a youth ambassador at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, the report says more about her. This is more than I think many of us have done, at least by the time we were in the 11th grade. Pretty impressive. Thank you.
you.
Further, with regard to, the motion before us is the 12 resolutions with leave for staff to make technical conforming changes. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. I move the report, and it's one report for all 12, with leave for staff to make technical conforming and editorial changes. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the report with leave for staff say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Questions? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes,
Measures, the 12 measures sufficient?
yes, they are.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete for each?
Once the report is filed,
Madam Budget Director, these are confirmations, so there's no fiscal impact, so we are proceeding in compliance with council requirements.
Correct.
So without objection, these measures will be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. The next item for markup is Bill 26-49, entitled Seasonal Pricing and Price Gouging Amendment Act of 2026. As introduced, Bill 26-49 would make several changes to the district's price gouging law, including amending the definition of normal average retail price for vehicle rental companies and hotels to account for their use of seasonal pricing models, and clarifying that when the Attorney General brings an action in Superior Court against a violator, the court must assess the maximum penalty if a violation is found. As amended, the bill would also simplify the definition of normal retail price, make the declaration of a public emergency pursuant to Title VII, Chapter 23 of the DC Official Code an event that triggers a prohibition of price gouging. As amended, the bill clarifies that a person may charge consumers no more than normal retail price if the price increase is directly attributable to the increased cost of certain business expenses, prohibit the stockpiling of critical goods during an emergency, and allow the court to determine the most appropriate penalty for a violation of the prohibitions against price gouging and stockpiling. As a whole, the bill would make the district's price gouging law, which has never been substantially amended on a permanent basis since initially enacted in 1992, would make the district's price gouging law easier to understand and enforce. Given the district's experience during the COVID-19 pandemic and the small but ever-present risk of new emergencies that may seriously affect the health and well-being of district residents, updating the district's price gouging law is imperative. The committee print for the bill does this in several ways, including by amending definitions in the law to make enforcement of the law easier, ensuring that rental car companies and hotels are not penalized for utilizing seasonal pricing models, making a public emergency an event under which price gouging would be prohibited, prohibiting stockpiling of critical resources, and setting appropriate penalties for a violation of the law. I didn't read that quite right. The prohibiting of stockpiling is also during an emergency. These changes will ensure that the district is better prepared to address price gouging and stockpiling behavior in the future. The legislation was introduced by me on January 13th, 2025. There were earlier versions of this in previous council periods. The Committee of the Whole held a public hearing on the bill on November 19th, 2025. And as I recall, there was very little testimony, very little public comment on the bill. With that, I move the print with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes. Is there discussion? The vote will be on the print with leave for staff. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it unanimously. I move the report with leave for staff to make technical conforming and editorial changes. Is there discussion? Vote will be on the report with leave for staff. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report is filed,
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Is there a fiscal impact?
There is not.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. The last item for markup in the committee of the whole is Bill 26-364, entitled Gardner Bishop Elementary School Redesignation Act of 2026. The purpose of this legislation is to officially designate the school in, this will mean a lot to everybody, Lot 33 in Square 792 as Gardner Bishop Elementary School. The school currently is named Brent Elementary School. It's located in Ward 6 at 301 North Carolina Avenue. This is an official naming that involves the designation of postal addresses and other changes in official databases. Gardner Bishop, after whom this school will be named, as described by historians Chris Myers, Ash, and George Derek Musgrove in their landmark work, Chocolate City, A History of Race and Democracy in the Nation's Capital, was a talker. Gardner Bishop moved to Washington, D.C. in 1930 from North Carolina and soon after opened the B&D Barbershop at 15th and U Street. Mr. Bishop's shop became a hub for conversation and organizing. Quote, for 35 cents, customers could get a haircut and an earful from a gruff, unrefined, tell it like it is owner, unquote. Mr. Bishop's activism began when his eldest daughter, Judine, enrolled at Brown Junior High in 1947. Brown was a segregated Division II school for Black students built for 783 pupils, but crammed with over 1,700. Rather than integrate nearby under-enrolled white schools, the school board imposed staggered schedules that gave Black students only 4.5 hours of instruction per day. As a lawsuit filed by the PTA to allow for the transfer of students to under-enrolled schools, as that lawsuit worked its way through the courts, Brown Junior High School parents began to organize. Mr. Bishop became the face of the ensuing Brown Parent Group for Equality of Educational Opportunities. That was the name of the group, Brown Parent Group for Equality of Educational Opportunities. He led a 2-month school boycott beginning in December 1947, drawing media and congressional attention. However, the boycott was not producing meaningful change. Despite misgivings based on class differences, Mr. Bishop reached out to and ultimately partnered with civil rights attorney Charles Hamilton Houston. The relationship between Mr. Houston and Brown Junior High School parents soon catalyzed the formation of the Consolidated Parent Group in 1948 to broaden the battle for educational equality district-wide. Mr. Bishop served as the president of the Consolidated Parent Group, provided much of the grassroots organizing to arrange pickets, to interface with the media, to take depositions, as Mr. Houston led the legal effort. Mr. Houston sickened and eventually died in 1950. He passed the legal work on to James Nabrit, who convinced Mr. Bishop and the Consolidated Parent Group to pursue a broader agenda, desegregation itself. In 1950, Mr. Bishop and parents attempted to enroll their students at the newly opened John Philip Sousa Junior High, which was reserved for white students. When the school board refused the students' entry, the group sued school board president Melvin C. Sharp, leading to the U.S. Supreme Court case Bowling v. Sharp. Decided in 1954, alongside Brown v. Board of Education, Bowling held that segregation in D.C. schools violated the Fifth Amendment's guarantee of due process, ending legal segregation in the district. Mr. Bishop continued to run his U Street shop until 1985 and remained a local touchstone for civic action. The decision to rename Brent Elementary School as Gardner Bishop Elementary School reflects a deliberate, values-driven process by the school community. Beginning in 2024, Brent Elementary School Equity and Inclusion Group launched an 18-month campaign to select a namesake who better embodied the school's principles. And in that process, they came up with Gardner Bishop as the name. Naming the school as Gardner Bishop Elementary School is the result of robust community engagement and council discussion. Mr. Bishop's example teaches us all an invaluable lesson about the power of any individual to right social wrongs. For these reasons, the Committee of the Whole recommends the approval of Bill 26-364, the Gardner Bishop Elementary School Redesignation Act of 2026, assuming this is approved. The bill was introduced by Councilmember Allen on September 23rd, 2025. The Committee of the Whole held a hearing on January 13th, 2026, and there was no testimony in opposition to the legislation. I move the print with leave for staff to make technical conforming changes. Is there discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank you and your staff for moving very quickly and getting this bill to markup today. The hearing on this legislation was actually just on January 13th, just 3 weeks ago. So I very much appreciate the willingness to move quickly on this bill. I'll keep my comments brief, as the committee report and your own comments there did a great job of explaining the history of the school's current namesake and who we are naming the school about and for. It has been a very collaborative and community-centered process to rename the school. The future Gardner Bishop Elementary School has a lot of exciting things for its future. Right now, the school community is currently swinging at Meyer Elementary School because its current facilities are being rebuilt and modernized, and we're all excited for the new building and what it can bring to the school community when it comes online for the start of the 2027 and 2028 school year. And I'm happy that we were able to seize on this modernization as an opportunity to reevaluate and reassess the school's current namesake. This is the second time as the councilmember for Ward 6 that I've introduced and led a school redesignation bill through the legislative process. First, Shirley Chisholm Elementary School, and now the soon-to-be Gardner Bishop Elementary School. Both of these school communities engage in a transparent, good faith, collaborative, and organic effort led by the school community itself to choose how it wants to redefine itself and lead itself into the future. As a policymaker, it's a beautiful thing to see. Even for those leading the effort, it's going to take a lot of effort and sustained advocacy. These two school communities never wavered in their commitment to have a collaborative and community-centered renaming process, and their hard work has paid off. I've been very proud of the school leaders and students who have talked about why they wanted to go through this process, and importantly, why they believe Gardner Bishop is the right name for their values and the community they represent. He was an important figure who led change to break down structural racism and segregation in DC public schools, taking action in community and in the courts. As we begin Black History Month, I couldn't be prouder. This is one of the first legislative acts that our council is taking. One student who testified at the hearing answered it best when I asked him what value he hopes to see embedded in the school culture as a result of the renaming. He thought for a moment and he replied that he felt inspired by Gardner Bishop because the central message he took away was that when you see something wrong, you do something about it. And if that's a lesson that every student attending Gardner Bishop takes away and puts into practice in their own lives, we're all going to be better for it. Before I conclude, I also want to give my thanks to the soon-to-be Bishop School community, the public witnesses who testified at the hearing, in particular, Rachel Focherio, Cortavia Freeman, the school's PTA, and Andrew Pratt, who was one of the parent leaders in the renaming process, and Principal Lecknell, as well as DCPS for its support in allowing this process to take shape and flow the way that it did. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I encourage my colleagues' support.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any further discussion? Yes, Councilmember Crawford.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mr. Chairman, I want to commend the Equity and Inclusion Group from the Future Bishop Elementary School community that launched and led this process to select a new name for this school that embodies its values. Councilmember Allen, I'm just curious, from your perspective, since you introduced the bill, what impact do you believe this renaming will have on parents who are considering sending their kids to the school and on students who are currently enrolled?
I appreciate the question. I think the process will be a little bit like what we saw take place at Chisholm Elementary, where the namesake of that school previously was John Tyler, not somebody that we necessarily held up and revered and told history about or taught about. What I've seen take place at Chisholm is a school community that really understands who Shirley Chisholm was and the importance that she brought and the values they want to embed in every classroom. I think that the way that I've seen the Brent community take a very similar approach is they didn't want to talk about who Robert Brent was and what he represented and his negative legacy in our city. And instead, they are very excited to and have already begun the process of talking about Gardner Bishop and the actions that he took, the values that he put in place. And I think I see that reflected in the hallways of the school and the conversations I hear. And so I think parents will be very proud to say that they go to Gardner Bishop and that they're sending their children there. And I think we're going to see children that bring that value and move it forward, which is what I think we all want. Thanks.
Further, with regard to the legislation, the vote will be on the print with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. I move the report with leave for staff to make technical, conforming, and editorial changes. Is there discussion? Vote is on the report with leave for staff. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report is filed,
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Is there a fiscal impact?
There is not.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. We'll turn now to measures from other committees. If there's no objection, the first two will be presented in block. They are nominations to the Board of Dietetics and Nutrition. PR 26-455, Board of Dietetics and Nutrition, Kayla Smith, Confirmation Resolution of 2026. PR 26-456, Board of Dietetics and Nutrition, Rachel Gabauer, Confirmation Resolution of 2026. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. PR 26-455 nominates Kayla Smith to the Board of Dietetics and Nutrition as a licensed dietitian member, filling a vacant seat for a term ending March 12, 2028. Ms. Smith has more than 10 years of experience in nutrition services across clinical care, dialysis settings, and long-term care, with expertise in quality improvement, patient education, and regulatory compliance. She currently serves as Strategic Manager of Nutrition Services as Fresnes Medical Care, overseeing nutrition for more than 20 dialysis facilities and home health and home therapy programs, both in the district and across Maryland. She also manages a team supporting approximately 1,300 patients. She previously served as a registered dietitian with U.S. Renal Care and as the lead dietitian at NMS Health Care, where she supported clinical nutrition care planning, audited dietary compliance, and ensured survey readiness and adherence to state and federal standards. Her background includes program development, menu planning, budget analysis, and quality management systems tied to patient outcomes. She earned her Bachelor's of Science degree from Howard University, and she's a Ward 7 resident. PR 26-456 nominates Rachel Gabauer to the Board of Dietetics and Nutrition as a licensed dietitian member, filling a vacant seat for a term to end March 12, 2027. Ms. Gabauer has extensive experience in both inpatient and outpatient clinical nutrition, specializing in evidence-based care for eating disorders, gestational conditions, and chronic disease management. She currently serves as the clinical director at Monte Nido, where she leads a multidisciplinary team, providing partial hospitalization treatment, overseeing treatment plans, clinical operations, and staff development. She also serves in private practice as a dietitian with Tepper Nutrition, providing individualized counseling and intuitive eating disorder, chronic disease, as well as on general wellness. Her prior experience was at MedStar Georgetown University Hospital as a clinical dietitian. She earned her dual Bachelor of Science in Biology and Nutritional Sciences from the Pennsylvania State University, and she is a Ward 6 resident. We have some vacancies on this board. Both of these members or nominees rather, are very qualified and eager to serve, and I hope colleagues will support them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, are these two measures legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, they are.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete for each?
yes,
Madam Budget Director, these are confirmations, so there is no fiscal impact statement. So there's no fiscal impact, so we're complying with our rules. That was a yes. Without objection, these measures will be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. Next is Bill 26-156, PrEP DC Act of 2026, reported out of the Committee on Health, chaired by Councilmember Henderson. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The PrEP Amendment Act of 2025 was introduced on February 28th, 2025 by Councilmember Zachary Parker, along with Councilmembers Allens, Bonds, Felder, Louis George, Nadeau, Pinto, Robert White, and myself as co-introducers. It was jointly referred to the Committee on Health and Business and Economic Development. The Committee on Health held a public hearing on the bill on October 30th, 2025, and it passed it unanimously via markup in December. Following the reorganization of CBED this January, the bill was solely referred to the Committee on Health. The District of Columbia has been fighting to prevent and treat HIV/AIDS for over 40 years. At the height of the epidemic in the 80s and the early 90s, hundreds of district residents lost their lives to this deadly disease each year. Even after effective antivirals for HIV were introduced in the United States, AIDS continued to be the leading cause of death among Black women and men, as well as white men between the ages of 25 to 44 in 1998. Many residents cannot access effective antivirals because of cost, stigma, and lack of awareness. By 2003, the district's annual rate of new AIDS cases was over 10 times the national average, with the highest of any major American city. At the time, 9,375 individuals were living with AIDS in the district, and there had been over 7,000 AIDS-related deaths since 1984. In 2005, the CDC issued guidance for using post-exposure prophylaxis, also known as PEP, to prevent new HIV cases in patients who had likely been exposed in non-occupational settings. To be effective, PEP must be administered within 72 hours of exposure. When administered correctly, it reduces HIV infections by 81%. In 2012, the FDA approved Truvada, which is the first pre-exposure prophylaxis, also known as PrEP, for HIV. Truvada is a daily pill that is extremely effective when taken as prescribed, but there are high barriers to adherence. More options for PrEP have been introduced in the last several years. In 2021, the FDA approved Apratitude, an injectable PrEP given every 2 months. Then there was another one, a longer acting injectable PrEP, which is given twice yearly. I want to emphasize the importance of these new options. Injectable PrEP has a higher adherence rate than the pill form, with one provider telling the committee that they have been able to effectively serve more patients, particularly in Black communities, with the injectable PrEP. The introduction and use of PEP and PrEP in the district has been critical to decrease the district's new HIV cases. In 2023, the district achieved a very important milestone. DC Health reported 192 new cases of HIV. This was the first time that the District of Columbia had less than 200 new cases per year of HIV since the 1990s. However, there are still over approximately 11,670 district residents living with HIV, with the highest concentrations being in wards 5, 7, and 8. Young people, 20 to 29 years old, and Black men and women are experiencing new HIV cases at disproportionately high rates. Mr. Chairman, I just need a few more minutes.
Without objection.
Compared to the district's general population. At the same time, the federal government has cut over $4 million in the district's HIV and STI prevention efforts in the last several years. And the district is being faced with difficult decisions about ceasing prevention programs that have been helping the district in this progress. With the landscape, it's more important than ever that we use every tool available. So this legislation takes several critical steps to protect access to PrEP and PEP, and to protect residents who are prescribed these medications from discrimination when seeking other forms. First, the committee prohibits health insurers from using prescription information for HIV prevention medication to medically underwrite premiums for specific enrollees. Second, it prohibits insurers from imposing cost sharing, requiring prior authorization, or imposing any medically unnecessary restrictions or delays for the coverage of HIV prevention services, including at least one regimen of PrEP and PEP. After working with advocates and community leaders over the last few days, Councilmember Parker and I do plan to offer an amendment at the legislative meeting that will expand this requirement to all formulations of PrEP approved by the FDA. Third, this committee incorporates Bill 26-101, removing barriers and reducing stigma to encourage HIV prevention. This legislation has been introduced the last 2 council periods by Councilmember Pinto and prohibits discrimination by insurance carriers when issuing, canceling, or renewing insurance based on an individual's prescribed HIV prevention treatment. Finally, the committee establishes a special purpose revenue fund for the DC Health and Wellness Center. It creates a non-lapsing fund for them to be able to collect out-of-pocket payments and insurance reimbursements. That would, the money will go back to operate the center. It's operated by DC Health and it provides HIV and STI prevention services. This legislation is good. Yeah, I request that this bill be placed on the non-consent agenda at today's legislative meeting so that Councilmember Parker and I can move our amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there questions from members?
Mr. Chairman,
Question.
I will save my statement for the legislative meeting, but as you can tell by the introductory statement by Councilmember Henderson, this is a significant piece of legislation. That said, I do have a question about the non-lapsing DC Health and Wellness Center Fund to collect revenue from out-of-pocket costs and that money going back into DC Health or affiliated clinics. Can you just elaborate on how DC Health plans to distribute that fund, determine how funds are to be dispersed, and like how we as a council can monitor the use of these funds over time?
Sure. So,
And I'm sorry,
go ahead.
it's worth noting that that was an addition by the committee to the bill. It wasn't part of the underlying bill. I think it's a good addition, but just have a question about how it's going to be executed.
Sure. So the DC Health and Wellness Center has recently been authorized to start billing private insurance and Medicaid, but that funding would essentially just go back to the general fund. So by creating an SBR, it creates a sustainable funding stream for the critical work of the center. And that could be for anything and the amount of things that they do. I visited the Health and Wellness Center last year. It's kind of tucked right off of New York Avenue if anybody is interested or need to schedule a visit. But for FY24, 7,547 STI testing clinic visits. They had 794 patients prescribed PrEP from their site. 421 got PEP. And that was also sort of initiated out of there. The school-based health centers are also associated with this as well. So again, this allows for them to be able to just continue to provide services to individuals and they don't turn anyone away.
Nice. Thank you. I'm glad we're doing that. I think it will help make those programs more accessible and expand our reach and access at a time where the federal government is slashing efforts to extend and expand HIV and AIDS prevention methods. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilmember. Are there questions from anyone else? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Is there a fiscal impact?
There is not.
This measure will be placed on the non-consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. And finally, reported out of the Committee on Transportation and the Environment, PR 26-360, Green Finance Authority Board, Edward Hubbard Confirmation Resolution 2026. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. PR 26-360, the Green Finance Authority Board Edward Hubbard Confirmation Resolution of 2025 was introduced on October 24th, 2025 by you, Mr. Chairman, at the request of the mayor. The resolution confirms the reappointment of Edward Hubbard as a voting member of the Green Finance Authority Board with financial, project management, or legal expertise in clean energy, clean infrastructure, clean transportation, stormwater management, or green infrastructure for a term to end July 9th, 2028. For some quick background, the DC Green Finance Authority, also known as the DC Green Bank, was established in 2018. The bank offers innovative financing solutions for this purpose and focuses its investments on solar energy, greener and more efficient buildings, infrastructure resilience, and transportation electrification. DC Green Bank is governed by the Green Finance Authority Board, consisting of 11 members. Of those members, 4 are non-voting and include representatives from various relevant agencies of the executive. The 7 voting members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the council, and those seats on the board are reserved for members with expertise in clean energy, clean infrastructure, clean transportation, stormwater management, or green infrastructure. Mr. Hubbard has served on the Green Finance Authority Board since its foundation in 2019. In addition to his work on the board, Mr. Hubbard has experience in energy and transportation policy. He He's currently General Counsel and Vice President of the Government Affairs at the Renewable Fuels Association, an industry association representing the American ethanol industry, where he has worked for over a decade. Before taking that position, Mr. Hubbard was the Legislative Director for U.S. Representative Alfred R. Wynn, where he advised the member on energy and environmental policy related to the activities of the Energy and Commerce Committee. Prior to that position, Mr. Hubbard was an associate at Willoughby and Associates and at Skadden, Arps, Slate, Meager, and Flum LLP. Mr. Hubbard holds a JD from the Howard University School of Law and a BA in Political Science from the University of California at Los Angeles. Based on the experience noted above, the committee voted to approve Mr. Hubbard's reappointment on the board at its January 20th additional meeting, and I encourage my colleagues' support of Mr. Hubbard's renomination today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I ask this measure be placed on the consent agenda for the legislative meeting to follow.
Thank you, Ms. John. Are there questions from members? Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Director, this is a confirmation, no fiscal impact statement.
Correct.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. That's going to conclude the business of this committee of the whole. I usually say 5 minutes to transition to the legislative meeting, but it's always about 7 or 8 minutes, so. But that doesn't mean people should leave the chamber because they shouldn't. But we will start at 1:05. It's 12:57 PM and this meeting's adjourned. I'm calling to order this meeting. This is a legislative meeting of the Council of the District of Columbia. It's the 24th legislative meeting of Council Period 26. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chair of the Council, and today is Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026. The time is 1:05 in the afternoon, and we are in room 500, the council chambers of the Johnny Wilson Building. This meeting is being broadcast on cable channel 13 as well as on the council's website, www.dccouncil.gov. This is a regular meeting of the council, and we always begin our legislative meetings with a moment of silence. If we could have a moment of silence in the chamber. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Allen,
Here.
Councilmember Bonds,
Here.
Councilmember Crawford,
Here.
Councilmember Felder,
Present.
Councilmember Freeman,
Present.
Councilmember Henderson,
Here.
Councilmember Lewis George,
Here.
Chairman Mendelson,
Present.
Councilmember Nadeau,
Here.
Councilmember Parker, Councilmember Parker, Councilmember Pinto, Councilmember Pinto, Councilmember Robert White,
Present.
Councilmember Trayon White.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We have the Secretary's report of committee filings. I'm going to recognize the Chair Pro Tem, Councilmember Anita Bonds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to waive the reading of the Secretary's report.
So a motion to waive the reading of the Secretary's report. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We have the Secretary's report of introductions and referrals. Again, I'm going to recognize the Chair Pro Tem, Councilmember Anita Bonds.
Mr. Chairman, I move to waive the reading of the Secretary's log of introductions and referrals.
There's been a motion to waive the reading. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We have the consent agenda. And are there any changes to the consent agenda?
Chairman, yes, I'd like to remove the juvenile curfew bill from consent.
I believe that's on page 3 at the top of page 3. Are there any other changes to the consent agenda? Hearing none. We have the consent agenda with one item removed. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it unanimously. Just remembered, we used to do all of these, Madam Secretary, by roll call when it was virtual. Gosh, those were great days. Turning to the Juvenile Curfew Congressional Review Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2026, PR 26-520. Councilmember Pinto? I'm going to move the declaration. This is a congressional review emergency to continue in place what the council has already adopted. So moved. Discussion? The vote will be on the declaration. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed?
No, Mr. Chairman, please record me as voting no.
Please record me as voting no. Chairman, please record me as voting no, please.
Please record me as voting no.
Councilmember Pinto is present. Councilmember Pinto, how do you vote on the declaration? Councilmember Pinto, how do you vote on the declaration?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, as you may have seen, I just re-entered the room. What are we voting on?
The Congressional Review Emergency Declaration.
Yes.
Madam Secretary, I believe that 2/3 are yes. The ayes have it on the declaration. We have the underlying bill before us. Councilmember Pinto, do you want to move that?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there discussion? The vote will be on Bill 26-587. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Are there any?
Please record me as voting no.
Please record me as voting no, Chairman.
Please record me as voting no, Chairman.
Please record me as voting no.
The ayes have it with 4 members recorded as voting no. Madam Secretary, you got that? The ayes have it. Turning to the non-consent agenda. The first item is Bill 26-159, Prep DC Amendment Act of 2026. Councilmember Henderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilmember Parker and I circulated an amendment at 5:28 PM yesterday, which makes 3 changes. First, the amendment addresses concerns from advocates regarding the committee print's prohibition on cost sharing for only one regimen of HIV treatment. In October of 2024, the U.S. Department of Labor, Health and Human Services, and Treasury issued guidance confirming that the Affordable Care Act requires insurers to cover all formulations of PrEP currently approved by the FDA. If the federal government rolls back PrEP coverage in the future, this amendment will assure that the district maintains a strong PrEP coverage requirement consistent with the 2024 federal guidance, while also allowing for future formularies covered by the FDA that they deem to be safe and clinically effective. Second, the amendment also clarifies that insurers cannot impose cost sharing for either the initial or follow-up appointments for HIV prevention, as advocates voiced concerns that this was ambiguous in the print, though our intent had been for both to be covered. Finally, the amendment makes a technical correction by striking the phrase prior authorization from the definition of medically unnecessary restrictions because it is redundant with the prohibition on prior auth in other portions of the bill text. And without objection, I move that amendment.
We have the amendment before us. Is there discussion? Councilmember Pinto, are you wanting to be recognized?
I have a comment on the bill, but we can discuss after we vote on the amendment.
Okay.
I have a question on the amendment. At the
Councilmember
breakfast,
Crawford.
I asked if there was a fiscal impact. Do we get a FIS on this?
There is no FIS.
There is.
There's no FIS, as in there's no fiscal impact?
Sorry, there is no fiscal impact. There exists a fiscal impact statement, but it would reflect that there is no cost.
Thank you.
Anything further with regard to the amendment? On the amendment, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The amendment is approved. We have the bill as amended before us. Councilmember Pinto?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really want to thank you and congratulate you, Councilor Henderson and Councilor Parker, for all of your leadership on this bill. It is incredibly important for the safety and health of our neighbors to have access to pre and post-exposure prophylaxis medications, PrEP or PEP, to prevent HIV and AIDS without facing the huge cost burdens that these medications can provide. I also want to thank you, Councilmember Henderson, for incorporating several provisions from my bill, the Removing Barriers and Reducing Stigma to Encourage HIV Prevention Amendment Act of 2025 into the final version of this bill. My bill prohibits discrimination by insurance carriers when issuing, canceling, or renewing insurance based on an individual's prescribed use of HIV prevention treatment. And this is created to reduce disparities that we see in access to coverage for all individuals who might need this medication. PrEP gives individuals the ability to protect themselves independently, particularly if they're unable to ensure condom use or are in a relationship with a partner of unknown or positive HIV status. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, over 1.2 million Americans are living with HIV, with nearly 38,000 new diagnoses each year. When insurers deny, cancel, or raise rates for those using preventative care, it creates barriers that directly undermine efforts to end the HIV epidemic, not to mention that it wrongly assigns risk to behavior that is inherently about preventing risks. Even small increases in out-of-pocket costs or administrative hurdles can and does lead to a significant decline in PrEP usage. I'm grateful to Councilmember Henderson for including these and other changes to the bill, which makes this legislation stronger and more holistic. And as we wait for federal legislation like HR 7189, PrEP Access Act to be passed, it's imperative that we work together as legislators in DC to close gaps that are inadvertently impactful to some of our most at-risk neighbors. Thank you again to Councilmember Henderson for your partnership in this important issue affecting our district families and communities, and look forward to supporting this bill today.
Thank you, Councilmember Pinto. Is there further discussion? Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm incredibly proud to see this bill approaching this critical step. In February 2025, I introduced the PrEP DC Act of 2025, and through the committee's work, it has been enhanced. This legislation, among other things, will make access to PrEP accessible by making sure that health insurers don't use prescription information as a condition of eligibility or in premium rates. It will ensure that they don't prohibit or restrict or impose delays in prescribing drugs for the treatment of prevention of HIV and AIDS. And it prohibits health insurers from imposing a deductible and co-insurance co-payments or other cost-sharing requirements for PrEP or PEP. To prevent HIV and AIDS infections. And I would just say LGBTQ representation in our policy-making bodies matters not only because it ensures that voices of communities long marginalized are heard, but because lived experiences shape effective and equitable law. As Councilmember Henderson alluded to earlier, especially over this past week, but acutely the last few days, we have been talking with advocates, partners like Whitman Walker and others, making sure that we got this bill to the place that it is today. And I just want to acknowledge the many people that gave insight and input and to thank them for their partnership here. As also was mentioned earlier, we have seen a lot of progress in the district with rates reaching a nearly 30-year low. And this legislation will help, again, expand access to these life-saving medications. I will end by saying this bill is more than access to medicine. It is also about affirming the humanity of LGBTQ people, confronting stigma with action, and embedding these protections that are now accorded in the Affordable Care Act in local law. And the reason why that is important is because we know there are routine efforts to undermine Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act at the federal level. And we are safeguarding these protections here locally for district residents. So I'll stop there. Really excited to vote for this. And I want to thank Councilmember Henderson for her work on part of the committee and making sure that we can get it across the finish line. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Parker. Further, we have the bill before us as amended. This is Bill 26-159. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is Soul of the City Business Improvement District Amendment Act of 2025. Bill 26-421. This is on non-consent because Councilmember Tran White and I have an amendment. With regard to the bill, this is final reading, so moved. With regard to the amendment, which was circulated yesterday, so moved. The amendment aligns the language in the permanent bill, that's what's before us, with the emergency legislation that was passed after an amendment on January 6th. Since bid taxes are billed prospectively, this change ensures that the bid can collect the April 1st, 2026 to September 30th, 2026 tax amounts that are billed by the Office of Tax and Revenue that are billed in March 26 and are March 2026 and are due March 31st, 2026. As I said, so moved. Councilmember Tran White, do you wish to say anything?
Yes, Chairman, briefly, I just want to thank you. Also, former Councilmember King McDuffie and my team for introducing and getting this bill moved forward. I think that we are long overdue for some economic empowerment in the community, and it gives the business community some support in our business corridor as we grow, not just with the Soda City bill, but also the Anacostia bill was also extended through another bill. It's long overdue in east of the Anacostia River, and I look forward to the outcomes that businesses will get support and the technical support they need to grow and stay as we encourage new business east of Anacostia River. So I want to thank you and all those who played a part in making sure this came to fruition. I encourage all my colleagues to vote yes on this today.
Thank you. So is there further discussion on the amendment? On the amendment, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. On the bill as amended, further discussion? All those in favor of the bill, Bill 26-421 as amended, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is Home Purchase Assistance for Transit Workers Amendment Act of 2025, Bill 26-98. Councilmember Robert White.
Thank you, Chairman. This bill introduced by Councilmember Nadeau expands the Employer-Assisted Housing Program, or EHAP, to include public transit workers, those who operate and maintain Metrobus, Metro Rail, Metro Access, and DC streetcar. These workers keep our city moving every day and deserve the chance to live in the communities they serve. At the last legislative meeting, it was noted that remaining EHAP funds were used for HPAP down payments for employees. That is true, but it is not the intended function of EHAP. DHCD should manage HPAP and EHAP funds so that transfers aren't necessary, because the council recognizes EHAP's importance in attracting and retaining a talented workforce. We should secure more funding for HPAP, not take EHAP funds away from applicants. Some have asked, why include WMATA employees since they aren't district government employees? One reason, we already do something similar through the DC for Me program, which provides housing assistance to WMATA employees. This bill simply applies the same logic to EHAP for consistency and fairness. Helping transit workers live in the district strengthens our workforce and economy. I thank Councilmember Nadeau for her leadership and urge my colleagues to vote in favor. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember White. This is on non-consent because I voted against this at first reading and will vote against it today. If I speak at any length, then I will provoke more debate, which I'm not interested in doing. On the other hand, if I don't speak to it, then why is it that I'm voting no? So I will explain why I'm not supporting this. I do think there's a value to home purchase assistance for transit workers, just as I think that there's a value to home purchase assistance to anyone who wishes to buy in the District of Columbia. And to be sure, we have such a program. And it's under that program that transit workers can benefit. Transit workers, however, are not DC government employees, and the program that's being amended to include this is for DC government employees. If there is money being unspent in the fund for EHAP, Employee Housing Assistance Purchase, if there is money left over, either we should increase the benefits for DC government workers, which is what the program is intended to benefit, or we should take that surplus money and put it into other housing programs such as home purchase assistance for anyone, including transit workers. This is not the right approach, and that is why I'm not supporting this. If there's no further discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
See, my prediction is true. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know you wanted to be brief, so I will be. We talked about this at length at the last legislative meeting. I would be more sympathetic to that argument, however, except for the fact that we already allow EHAP to be eligible for people who are not district government employees. Our charter workers, teachers in our charter schools are eligible for EHAP. we made that choice because we substantially fund our charter schools, and we believe that it's a good idea to have our teachers in both DC public schools and DC charter schools live here in the district. So we've already made the policy choice that things that are significantly funded with DC public dollars that serve public goods but are not government workers are eligible for a program like this. So for a metro agency, transit agency that we spend $1 billion in every year, those are workers that I would love to have living here in the district when so many do not. So I'd be more sympathetic to that argument if it was consistent with what we already do, but it's not. I think we've made policy choices that use our public dollars to make sure that we are allowing eligibility for our EHAP program for critical workers in many sectors that we and the public significantly fund. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I am so tempted. If there's nothing for Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you. Just Councilor Allen inspired me. I just want to say that I'm thrilled to support this bill today. I want to thank Councilor White for moving it. And as we think about all sorts of our public employees who do all sorts of important and foundational work for the city, we also have programs that support efforts for our police and firefighters, many of whom do not live in the district either. And as we continue to try to make it more affordable to live here, we would love opportunities for all of our transit workers and our firefighters and our police officers to be able to live in DC. But I appreciate efforts to continue exposing all of those essential workers to the benefits of our city. So thank you.
The vote will be on on Bill 26-98. Boy, I am so tempted. The vote will be on 26-98. All those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? No. Please record me as voting no. Councilmember Bonds is voting no.
Any DC employee.
Madam Secretary, record me, and Councilmember Bonds is voting no. So this could come up for a third reading. Maybe you would have 3 no votes. So the measure is approved. The next item for consideration is PR 26-521, entitled the Budget Enhancement Information Litigation Authorization Resolution of 2026. What this legislation does is authorizes the council's Office of General Counsel to initiate, defend, intervene, participate, or take any other action in a matter in any court or tribunal on behalf of the Council of the District of Columbia to assert the interest of the council, in obtaining certain agency budget enhancement requests that must be furnished to the council pursuant to DC Code 47-318.05A. There are 2 important facts that I want to make in presenting this. The first is that we are an equal branch of the government. This is the legislative branch. The legislative branch is co-equal to the executive branch. The second point I want to make is that we alone of the 2 branches are the ones who appropriate the budget. We are the appropriators of the dollars. For purposes of conducting performance oversight, as part of our impending consideration of the fiscal year 2027 budget, council committees asked executive agencies to transmit copies of their fiscal years 2025 and 2026 budget enhancement requests, not FY27. I was wrong when earlier I said FY24, but the last 2 years, and maybe not every committee did, but I believe most committees did ask for this information. These requests, more commonly known as Form B or Form 2 requests, reflect district agencies' best assessments of their own budgetary needs and therefore constitute information that would be critically helpful to the council as it discharges its responsibilities as appropriator for the district. So I did bring to the dais several copies of examples of Form Bs. They're dated and they're also independent agencies. If anyone wants to see, I have one here. I think there are 2 down there. Can you pass that down to Councilmember Lewis George? Is somebody holding on to them down there?
Yeah.
Pass them down. Somebody want to look at them? Those are examples, and they provide important and useful information to council committees about agencies and what agencies think they need, their assessment of their budget needs. I have those because those are either from independent agencies, or you may notice like DCRA is from 2019. Sometimes we have gotten them by mistake. That is, that the agency wasn't supposed to give them to us. Now, in response to the committees this year requesting this information, the Office of Policy and Legislative Affairs, fondly known as OPLA, circulated a memorandum on January 6th to all deputy mayors and agency heads, saying that these documents are not to be disclosed to the council. Quote, "This request asks for information that is protected from disclosure by the deliberative process and executive privileges," unquote. If there's no objection, additional time. Contrary to the executive's assertion, and a similar assertion was made in the mayor's letter today, neither of those privileges protects the agency budget requests at issue from the disclosure to the council. First, to the extent that these budget enhancement requests might otherwise be protected, that privilege was abrogated when the council enacted DC Official Code 47-318.05A, which I believe we enacted 20 years ago, which directs the mayor, and its amendment to, it's part of the Freedom of Information Act, which directs the mayor and the chief financial officer, they are required to transmit, quote, this is the statute, actual copies, not summaries, of all agency budget enhancement requests, including the Form B, for all district agencies, unquote, to provide those to the council with the proposed budget. Despite the plain text of the law, the executive continues to decline to transmit budget enhancement requests to the council. Again, we are a co-equal branch of the government. Second, there's already been litigation over this. The executive's assertion that they are protected from disclosure by deliberative process and executive privileges was expressly rejected by the court. The executive lost in the trial court. They took it to the Court of Appeals. They lost in the Court of Appeals. After they lost in the Court of Appeals, I immediately wrote to the mayor and requested copies of the Form Bs and have yet to receive a response. The Court of Appeals expressly rejected the executive's claims of executive privilege and affirmed the trial court's order directing the executive to produce the Form Bs and other agency budget request documents referenced in the plaintiff's FOIA request. The plaintiff in that case, a nonprofit, has recently filed a motion against the executive for contempt. To protect the council's ability to be fully informed when adopting budgets, especially as we approach the fiscal year 2027 budget season, as we approach the impending budget, council adoption of this authorization resolution is necessary. I want to reiterate, we have requested this information repeatedly. This is not the first time. And I don't believe we should be like the Congress of the United States and sit by while the executive disregards what a court has ordered. We have repeatedly requested this. Every committee, or most, if not all committees, requested these Form Bs this year as part of their agency oversight questions. This request was in the budget submission resolution that the council adopted unanimously last December, as it was in the previous year's budget submission requirement, our resolution. As I said last July, I wrote the mayor 3 times requesting these documents after the Court of Appeals decision. And at least the committee of the whole has requested this information virtually every year, as long as the current mayor has been mayor. So this is not new. But we now have a court order, 2 court orders on our side here, and this information is useful, if not critical, to each committee's consideration of their agency's budgets. So I move the resolution PR 26-521. Is there discussion? Councilmember Parker.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you for that. I plan to support this for several reasons. One, on principle. You mentioned it, and I just would reiterate that the council is a co-equal branch with our executive. And in order for us to conduct oversight, we have to have the ability to request and receive information. On top of that, it is the law. It is important to stress that this has already gone to court, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
There's already been a ruling, if I'm not mistaken.
yes.
And the executive is not only saying to the council, we will not give up information. The executive is telling the courts, another co-equal branch, we will not give up information. That is incredibly dangerous. And I think the association you made with what's happening at the federal level is astute. Last thing I would just say, for the purpose of our budget formulation, this information is also very valuable because I can't tell you how many times we've sat in hearings where a director will smile and say, yes, my budget is sufficient, although we're seeing that there are cuts or reductions and or programs are being slashed. And having access to this information could allow us to have better line into sight where the experts think there actually needs to be enhancements versus the budget that comes down from the executive, which is informed by many other things. So for those three reasons, I plan to support this, but I hope that it would not come to the need for us to actually follow through on a suit, and that there could be some sort of middle ground where the law is actually followed here. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Lewis George, did you ask to be recognized? Councilmember Fruman.
Is it to me? Okay.
You're the only council member named Truman.
I heard Louis George. So I actually am not going to support this. And I get it that there is a lot of water under the bridge in terms of the law in 2006 and then the BSA title in 2022. And I get it that various council members supported this in those processes. I may have supported it indirectly in an umbrella of other things that were proposed in budget resolutions. It is not that I don't think these documents are interesting. You showed us the documents, some of the documents. They're super interesting. It is that I do think it's part of a deliberative process inside of the executive to allow for candid discussion inside of the executive in order to formulate the budget. And that if we do this, if we go down this route, it's not that in the future we'll get these documents. They won't exist. And instead, what will happen is a more cumbersome process for deliberation about the budget inside of the executive than exists today. And so I don't want to do that. And I think it also kind of comes in the context of where we made significant changes to the open meetings rules because we believed that it was very important for us to be able to do deliberative work inside of the council and not in the public view. And so I get it. I get it's the law. I get it's the documents would be useful. But I don't think that doing this will lead in the future to more meaningful information for us. And I think it will result in a more difficult process for a future executive. So I won't be supporting it.
Councilmember Felder.
Just want to echo Matt's sentiments. I think they are spot on. Having had worked for the executive, I understand the nuances that goes into budget formulation and how we have our internal process as a council. I think we should respect the internal process as the executive. Furthermore, while I think this bill, the principle and the premise of it is in good nature, I'm just thinking about mayors that may come in the future and the precedent that we're setting. And I also we're all one government and we need to learn to work together without having to put laws in place that will give the legislative body the authority to sue the executive body. That just doesn't make sense to me. So I won't be supporting this bill either.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm uneasy about this particular resolution that we have in front of us. I'm going to ask the question. So my understanding, at least from what has already happened in terms of the judicial pieces, what is the meaningful impact of the council joining this? Is this somehow going to trigger the mayor complying? Is this going to change a judicial outcome in any way? Is this just to add strength to the judicial record?
Our general counsel has asked for this authorization to give our general counsel flexibility in proceeding forward. So I do not know whether that means somehow joining the Bradley case or something separate, or as Councilmember Parker suggested, that by taking this next step, that it puts more pressure on the executive to comply with the court orders. So in a word, it is flexibility for our general counsel.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, that there are definitely times where we have to use the very extreme measure of suing the executive. I think we threatened that a couple of years ago with regard to SNAP.
SNAP, yes.
And I was right there with you on that. On this, I'm a little, I feel like in some ways we have to not pick our battles, but the ones that are actually meaningful in that. I'm not sure what we gather from the Form B that we can't gather from honest conversations with directors around what are programs, what are needs, et cetera. To the point of a colleague around the deliberative process, I think the impact of this would be that, again, the documents just won't exist. They won't write it down. They'll maybe just have more in-person meetings or stat conversations or briefings or otherwise. But I do feel like it's important to have that record. And so I won't be supporting this today. Thank you.
Further with regard to this? So Councilmember Pinto, or I was about to respond to some of the comments.
Chairman.
So I'm a little bit shocked at what I'm hearing some members say, because what they're saying is that they're willing to accede to an executive who wants to withhold information from the council. And to me, that's just shocking. As I said before, we are a co-equal branch. But with regard to the budget, which is what this is about, only the mayor can propose a budget and only the council can adopt a budget. And when we adopt a budget, we are the appropriators, not the executive. So we, for instance, had this disagreement with SNAP with the executive because we appropriated dollars for SNAP. The executive doesn't get to second guess what we appropriate. But what we know, and every member here should know this, because every member's chaired a committee during budget oversight at least once, what we know is that executive agencies withhold information from the council. And information is the lifeblood of the budget process. If information is withheld from us, then what is being withheld from us is the ability to make an informed decision. Now, there's no question, somebody said, well, this is actually deliberative process. The court has said no. Not just the trial court said no, but the Court of Appeals said no. General counsel circulated that opinion earlier. Deliberative process does not exist. The ability for the mayor, after the budget is submitted, to withhold this information is not protected. The court has said that. And as I said, information is vital. It's the lifeblood to our being able to appropriate. And yes, some agencies will be honest in the discussion. Councilmember Henderson, some agencies are honest with you. They may not be honest with you on everything, but when you read these Form Bs, you learn more about what their need is than just through a conversation. I'm sorry, but you just do. So I have oversight over UDC. A couple of years ago, I remember there was an issue. UDC indicated that they could use for more money for a program. I said, well, can I have the Form B, which explained to me in detail, necessary detail, what it was, the program that they wanted. That's what the Form B provides. And I don't believe that these formal enhancement requests are going to go away. I just don't believe that. I think that's a false, how do I say, a false thought. That somehow an agency wanting additional money and having an initiative, or something that the council did that they think requires additional money. An initiative the agency comes up with, an initiative that the council's come up with, they're going to want to explain why they need more money as part of the budget process. And we need to know that information. It's not deliberative, even though you may think it is, but the court has said no. And I don't believe that these will go away. It's not precedent setting what we're doing because this has actually been the law since 2006. These requests have been over and over again, and this litigation, which involves a nonprofit, has been going on for at least 4 years. So it's not something new. Yes, we need to work together, but in this instance, the executive has chosen not to work with us. Give us the documents. This is not us being the ones who aren't working together. It's the executive. Councilmember Pinto, did you still want to speak?
Chairman.
I'll recognize you in a minute, Mr. White.
I guess a few thoughts. One is, with all due respect to our agency partners, we don't usually make decisions purely based off of an agency says they need more, because we hear from pretty much all of our agencies that they need more every year, because all of our agencies are an important part of our ecosystem. And we might hear from our agencies they need 100 new FTEs for a new program that they want to start or a new initiative. And then we all as a body consider that perspective. We hear from the public and we make budget decisions based off of investments that we want to make. So I'm not too persuaded by the argument that we need to know all of the specifics about what each agency asks for. With that being said, the law is the law. The law says that they have to turn over these documentation. And so I'm a believer that we all have to follow the law, period. So I'm going to support you on this today, but I do think it is worth revisiting the conversation about should this be the law? Because to Councilor Fruman's point, there is some deliberative process here that we want to encourage between a functional government to make sure that conversations and recommendations between agencies and the executive are not limited, so that they can then present their budget proposal to us and then we can make our decision. So I just wanted to put that on the record because I do think this is worth coming back to as a body to determine if it should be the law. But at the end of the day, it is currently the law, and so therefore the law should be followed.
Thank you. Councilmember Tran White.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I agree in some degree that we have always had communication issues trying to get stuff from the administration. And I just don't know if this is a preference of personality with this administration and the unintended consequences of, I guess, redefining that line, going into a new administration coming up at some point, and even down the road, because once it's law, laws tend to stay for a long time. I'm kind of torn between getting what we need in a timely fashion and the communication. It hasn't been great, but I'm kind of hesitant on voting yes on this. I'm just kind of listening to the conversation. And I'm also curious about the unintended consequences it's going to have on new administrations coming down the line in the future. So just listening to the arguments.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's more I could add, at least with regard to the last point that you made. Further on this, Councilmember Parker.
Just two quick things. On this point of it being deliberative, and I just think it's important to refer back to what the courts have already decided. The court said it is not deliberative. The courts have already ruled. And so I think it's mental gymnastics for us to kind of say, oh, well, maybe the executive doesn't really have to follow the law. I agree with Councilmember Pinto. Whether or not we agree with the law, it is what it is today. And I think it would be a dangerous precedent for us to be saying anything counter to that. And the only other thing I would say in respect to future mayors, they too should follow the law. So it doesn't matter if it's this executive or a new executive. If it is the law, that is what it should be. So again, on principle alone, I would hope that the council would support this. And if we don't agree with it, then we should take that up at another date. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, the vote is on PR 26-521. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
Mr. Chairman, please record me as being no.
Mr. Chairman, please record me as voting no.
Chairman, record me as voting no, please.
Mr. Chairman, please record me as a no.
He is voting no also.
I missed somebody. Was that Councilmember Lewis George? Councilmember Henderson. The ayes have it. The next measure is Soul of the City Business Improvement District Temporary Amendment Act of 2026. This is on non-consent because it's unnecessary and should be postponed indefinitely. Councilmember Tran-White, do you want to make that motion or do you want me to move to postpone indefinitely?
I can move to postpone indefinitely. So move.
The motion is to postpone indefinitely. All those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the motion to postpone indefinitely is approved. The next measure is residential building permit classification emergency declaration resolution of 2026, PR 26-515. This legislation is renewing an emergency that was adopted a year ago. In March 2025, the council approved a similar bill in response to a policy enacted at that time by the Office of Tax and Revenue, whereby developers converting a commercial property to a residential property could not benefit from a change in tax classification from Class 2 to Class 1 until construction was, quote, 100% complete, and the building was, quote, in actual use, unquote. The Emergency Act clarified that developers may have commercial to residential reclassified after a building permit has been issued to construct a new improvement or substantially rehabilitate an existing improvement. The emergency became applicable in April. Temporary legislation actually expired a week ago. So there's a need to approve a new round of emergency legislation. A similar provision was included as a permanent measure in the Vacant to Vibrant Amendment Act of 2025. Unfortunately, those provisions are currently subject to appropriation because the bill is subject to appropriation. The committee is working with the Office of the Chief Financial Officer to determine the cost of funding those provisions. In other words, we're trying to sort out, because there's no fiscal impact to this part, but it was included in a bill with a subject to appropriations. So that's the status of the permanent. Meanwhile, the temporary has expired and we need to renew the emergency or the emergency and temporary. So I move the declaration. There is an amendment that Councilmember Nadeau wants to move. Councilmember Nadeau?
Thank you, Chairman. At this time, I'm moving an amendment to the emergency resolution, which is associated with an amendment to the underlying bill as well. This was circulated yesterday evening. These clarifying amendments are necessary to simplify the Office of Tax and Revenue's implementation of one-time real property tax relief for debts owed on property owned by Avanti Real Estate Services LLC at 3421 14th Street Northwest. This tax relief was funded in the FY26 budget and authorized by emergency and temporary legislation Council passed last year. OTR is ready to execute on that authority, but raised concerns about ambiguous or unintentionally restrictive language in the bills as passed. We determined the simplest approach would be to strike that proviso language in full rather than trying to tweak further, which we've been assured will avoid any further ambiguity or administrative burden on OTR. I want to thank the chairman for working with me to incorporate this amendment. I now move the amendment.
I'm sorry, we have the amendment before us. Is there discussion about the amendment? By voice vote, all those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? We have the declaration as amended. Further discussion? On the declaration, PR 26-515, all those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We have the underlying bill, Bill 26-577, so moved.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilmember Nadeau.
I move my amendment as well.
May you? That's up to you.
I said I move my amendment.
We have Councilmember Nadeau's amendment before us. Is there discussion on the amendment? On the amendment, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We have the bill as amended. Further discussion? On the bill, Bill 26-577 as amended, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is short-term disability insurance benefit protection clarification emergency declaration resolution of 2026. Councilmember Lewis George.
Thank you, Chairman. I am reintroducing the emergency and temporary versions of the short-term disability insurance benefit protection clarification amendment act in order to maintain a necessary protection for district families, prohibiting insurance companies from using the universal paid leave fund as rationale to not pay out the short-term benefits DC workers and employers have paid into. The current temporary act that is in place is set to expire at the end of the month, and unfortunately, the permanent version is still pending in SEAL, CBED, and COW. DC paid family leave has been a vital lifeline for families to be there to welcome newly arrived children, to care for loved ones on their final moments, or to take the time they need to care for themselves during a serious illness. But families often need more than just 12 weeks. Patients with breast cancer, for instance, require an average of 6 months of leave for treatment. When the medical or family leave is unpaid, it's economically destabilizing for families, often leading to debilitating debt and even bankruptcy and foreclosures. By requiring insurance companies to pay out the short-term disability benefit workers and their employers pay into, we can narrow that gap and ensure district families have access to more of the paid leave they need during a serious medical or family event. I urge my colleagues to pass these measures so as to not create a coverage gap for families, allowing them to be there for their loved ones when they need it most. With that, I move the declaration.
Thank you. We have the declaration before us. Is there discussion on the declaration? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We have the underlying bill, Bill 26-573. Councilmember Lewis George.
So moved.
Is there discussion? On the bill, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it unanimously. Parking Enforcement Modernization Technical Correction Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2026, PR 26-516. Councilmember Nadeau.
Thank you, Chairman. On December 17th, 2024, the council approved B 25-435, the Fraudulent Vehicle Tag and Parking Enforcement Modernization Amendment Act of 2024. The law includes an overhaul of statutes that govern parking enforcement procedures and enhancements in the district's ability to enforce against vehicles that use fraudulent or obscured vehicle tags, and prioritizes the immobilization and impoundment of abandoned, identifiable, and dangerous vehicles. This law was then funded, starting in FY26, through a combination of funds secured by the Committee on Public Works and Operations, the Committee on Transportation and the Environment, the Committee of the Whole. Thank you to Councilmember Allen and to you, Chairman, for your support. However, there are two sections of the law that were funded but remain subject to appropriations. This legislation will ensure that all funded provisions are applicable. I plan to include identical language in permanent legislation being marked up by my committee, but I'm moving emergency and temporary measures today to allow for timely implementation of the law by DMV, DPW, and other agencies. With that, I move the declaration.
We have the declaration before us. Is there discussion? On the declaration, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it unanimously. We have the underlying bill, Bill 26-579. Councilmember Nadeau.
So moved.
Discussion? On the bill, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
It's getting a little weak. Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is Rhode Island Avenue Corridor Long-Term Lease Adjustment Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2026, PR 26-517. Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am moving this emergency to authorize the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development to issue grants to eligible businesses and commercial property owners on Rhode Island Avenue. We passed this allowance through our budget process. However, one of the criteria that we noted was that property owners needed a 10-year lease. In our discussions with DMPED, this isn't industry aligned with industry standards, and this isn't most feasible or efficient. So this emergency reduces that eligibility term to 3 to 5 years in order for DMPED to administer those grants. The goal of this is an ongoing effort to reimagine and revitalize Rhode Island Avenue. And I want to thank DMPED, the Office of Planning, and many other entities for their partnership in this effort. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Parker. Is there discussion? We have the declaration before us, PR 26-517. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The underlying bill, Bill 26-581, Councilmember Parker. Councilmember
So
Parker.
moved.
Discussion. Vote will be on Bill 26-581. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is PR 26-514, Friends of Wangari Gardens Grant Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2026. Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wangari Gardens is a community garden located on DDOT property bordered by Kenyon Street Northwest, Park Place Northwest, and Irving Street Northwest. The Friends of Wangari Gardens is a nonprofit organization that has a memorandum of understanding with DDOT regarding the use of Wangari Gardens. And up until this point, they have been using a water fire hydrant rather to water plants and the garden itself. Through the budget process again, we were able to secure grant funding in the amount of $75,000 so that Wangari Gardens, or the Friends of Wangari Gardens, can work with DC Water. I want to thank Councilmember Nadeau for her leadership and partnership in making that possible. And this emergency is necessary to authorize DDOT to actually extend the money because we could not give the money directly to DC Water because they are independent financial authority. We have to authorize DDOT to issue this grant. Thank you.
We have the declaration before us. Is there discussion? The vote will be on the declaration PR 26-514. All in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it unanimously. The underlying bill is Bill 26-575. Councilmember Parker.
So moved.
Discussion. Votes on Bill 26-575. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is PR 26-519, Net Zero Modification and Preservation Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2026. Councilmember Lewis George.
Thank you, Chairman. Colleagues, today I am introducing the Net Zero Modification Preservation Emergency Amendment Act of 2026. This legislation responds to a growing gap between the district's environmental laws and the practice realities of delivering capital projects and affordable housing. The bill is the result of months of research and engagement and is necessary for two straightforward reasons. First, as we enter the budget process, we need clarity on how capital projects will be funded. These include pools, recreation centers, fire stations, and other essential public facilities. For years, we have struggled to come to an understanding with the executive on what is needed to move our capital project forwards while meeting our high environmental standards. And we have an opportunity to avoid that situation once again this year. This legislation provides the clarity needed so that the budget submitted this spring reflects the true cost of delivering capital projects in compliance with the district law, which is, I know, something me and a number of my colleagues really want to happen so that they can answer their constituencies on projects, delays, or deliveries. Second, we need to ensure that affordable housing developers are operating under clear and consistent workable standards. This bill removes the on-site renewable energy requirement for affordable housing projects, not out of a lack of commitment, but from an understanding that these requirements as written are not workable for housing projects. As a result, these projects will no longer need to seek review by the Greener Building Advisory Council, also known as the GBAC, for their solar usage. Under current law, feasibility determinations can only be made by GBAC. Based on how GBAC review functions for other types of projects, extending that process to all affordable housing development raises. Without this change, GBAC will face an influx of affordable housing projects, which will create slowdowns and bottleneck both for residential and non-residential projects. This legislation actually provides clarity, relief, and flexibility, and something that is important that we need to do at this moment. With the Green Housing Coordination Act, when the Green Housing Coordination Act was passed last fall, many of my colleagues asked me to bring an amendment making these exact changes included in this bill. At that time, I committed to introducing emergency legislation that addressed all components of our net zero energy standards, including housing. And today, I am fulfilling that commitment. I cannot emphasize enough this council's commitment to climate resilience has not changed, but ambition standards alone are not enough. We are responsible for ensuring that those standards are workable and implemented as written. For years, the council has been forced to step in, repeatedly appropriating additional resources to keep projects moving, resolving technical disputes that should have been addressed through clearer statutory direction, and passing emergency legislation to correct challenges in affordable housing delivery. We want to ensure that our standards are actually implemented. Chairman, can I have an additional 30 seconds, please? We want to ensure that our standards are actually implemented, which is not always happening currently. We need to pass this legislation to ensure that our environmental standards are within reach, as well as upheld and implemented. We are acting on an emergency basis because clarity is needed. Without it, projects will continue to stall, costs will rise, and housing and public facilities will be put at risk. Not because our standards are too ambitious, but because they are unclear and inconsistently applied. This legislation restores balance, protects affordable housing and capital project delivery, preserves environmental integrity, reaffirms the district law must be followed, and supports a budget process that reflects the true cost of public investment. With that, I move the declaration.
Thank you, Council Member. We have the declaration before us. Is there discussion on the declaration? The vote will be on PR 26-519. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any no votes? Hearing none, the ayes have it unanimously. We have the underlying bill. Councilmember Lewis George.
So moved.
And you have an amendment, correct? Let me see. I have an amendment you circulated. I think that's your signature at 12:19 today. Am I on the wrong bill?
One moment.
Am I right?
Yes, if you're going by circulation, then I think Councilmember White would go first. But yes, I do have an amendment.
Well, as the author of the bill, I'm recognizing you first.
Okay, well, I'm moving an amendment to my emergency measure to strike the provision that ties exemption for affordable housing development to the effective date of the Green Building Code. Under the filed version of this bill, these exemptions expired upon the adaptation of the NZE Building Code. However, the code's current statutory deadline of 12/31/26 is one of the issues that remains outstanding to address in the permanent net zero reform bill. As such, covered residential projects should not be required to be designed under exemptions without knowing if and when those exemption standards will apply again. So I'm doing this to ensure certainty for providers who are designing projects now so that those designs are not subject to change later when our code is updated. With that, I move my amendment.
Thank you. Now, is this somehow duplicating, not duplicating, but so it's different than
Correct.
the other amendment? All right. So we have your amendment before us. I think you said so moved. Is there discussion?
I'm sorry. Councilmember Lewis George, can you just characterize again what do?
It ties exemptions for affordable housing development to the effective date of the Green Building Code.
And what is that date?
It makes it so that residential projects are not required to be designed under exemptions without knowing if and when those exempted standards will again apply.
I believe that the update is later this year. Am I right?
12/31/26.
That's later this year.
Oh,
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
sometimes I be forgetting what year we're in. Correct.
Councilmember Parker, has that answered your question?
Thank you.
Further, with regard to Councilmember Lewis George's amendment, the vote will be on her amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We also have an amendment from Councilmember Robert White. Councilmember White?
Thank you, Chairman. I want to thank Councilmember Lewis George for this bill, the bulk of which I support. When I chaired the Public Buildings Committee, I did a lot of work. The Government Operations Committee. I did a lot of work on greening our public buildings like Banneker and John Lewis, which were net zero. But my amendment has to do with something that's separate from this emergency, but attached to the emergency bill. Just a couple months ago, the council passed emergency and temporary versions of my Green Housing Coordination Amendment Act, which are in effect now. Those versions included a carefully considered compromise on net zero energy requirements for residential and mixed-use construction projects receiving assistance from the Housing Production Trust Fund. That compromise was the result of extensive collaboration with affordable housing developers, environmental advocates, and council offices. This emergency legislation, part of it, would undo that compromise. It reverts back to more stringent standards that housing providers have said are not well suited for multifamily residential construction. What we are hearing now from some affordable housing developers is that they are okay with the language, but the change in temporary law causes problems, and they would prefer that we do any changes in a permanent. Some are still opposing it. We've also heard concerns from some environmental groups which are concerned about removing the on-site renewables. This reversal will cause confusion and whiplash for housing developers and could delay the delivery of affordable housing units at a time when residents urgently need them. The compromise we reached late last year was workable for all sides. It balanced our commitment to sustainability with the practical realities of housing development. And in the last year, we've done a lot of work to make sure we're attracting capital investment back into the district for housing. The last thing we want to do is introduce unnecessary confusion in the housing marketplace. So my amendment does not undo everything in the emergency legislation, which does add some thoughtful new emergency standards. But the permanent bill of this version is making its way through council now. I held a hearing on the permanent version earlier this month, last month, January, and it was co-referred to the Committee on Facilities, chaired by Councilmember Lewis George, and other committees. That is where long-term changes on residential new construction should be debated. So this amendment preserves the compromise we reached just weeks ago and avoids unnecessary disruption. And so I move my amendment at this time, Chairman.
We have Councilmember White's amendment before us. Is there discussion? Councilmember Lewis George?
Thank you, colleagues. I would ask you to vote no on this amendment to strike my bill's improved and consistent affordable housing provision. I think there's been a lot of unnecessary confusion about what my bill does. So let me be clear. The bill does not impose any Appendix Z requirements on affordable housing projects. In the words of the coalition, there are no new requirements or steps added, just relief and flexibility. The bill provides the relief and flexibility providers are asking for by doing the following. It exempts conservation compliance, so no ZEPI score requirements. It exempts obtainment requirements, so no expensive energy credits as DC grows our green grid. And most importantly, it exempts the on-site renewable generation based on feasibility. So developers can add as much solar as they can without having to go through a GBAC feasibility determination. In drafting this, we had numerous conversations with various groups. And I want to remove doubt. GBAC review is required under the law, which uses a feasibility trigger to determine solar requirements. This feasibility language is used in multiple places in the code and DCMR and triggers GBAC or agency review if Councilmember White amendment goes through. If developers of residential or non-residential projects could determine feasibility for themselves, there would be no need for any outside review because developers could make the decision for themselves. If that was how the system actually worked, a feasibility requirement would not be needed in the law because the decision would be entirely at the discretion of the developer. But that is just not how the practice is working in process. The coalition recognizes the GBAC review reality in the current law, and they want to be able to rely on avoiding it while they are currently planning for funding, timeline, and designs of projects for the upcoming round of Housing Production Trust Fund funding. My bill, without this amendment, sets the stage for a clear, permanent, that does what our providers need and creates real certainty they've been asking for. If the amendment passes, the codification of third-party standards that are currently being changed would remain. Providers want to keep third-party standards in the regulations as they did when the current emergency law was passed. There was not consensus there then, and there is consensus now. If this amendment passes, the additional and separate energy requirements in the Housing Production Trust Fund Act would remain. Currently, the Green Buildings Act includes a solar requirement, but the emergency language in the HPTFA does not. The HPTFA creates its own definition of an all-electric standard that is different from the already established and understood electric standard in the Green Buildings Act. Under the amendment, providers would need to look at two different laws and understand separate standards to figure out all the requirements they have to follow. All environmental construction standards should be in the same place, use the same definitions as they always were before the current emergency, and would be again under my bill without this amendment. Legislating on emergency obviously is never ideal, but process should never get in the way. Can I have additional 30 seconds, Chairman?
30 seconds.
But process should never get in the way of good and evidence-based public policy and drafting, especially when its need is as urgent as it is here. Don't let the process be the enemy of progress, and I would ask that you vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis George. I have some questions because I'm a little bit confused. Councilmember White, you're moving the amendment because in part, it would immediately enforce Appendix Z standards, correct? Looking at your rationale.
Yes, but I guess in language everybody can understand, I'm moving the amendment to keep the law the compromise that we reached in place until we pass permanent legislation.
Okay, but just on the Appendix C, but now Councilmember Lewis George, your amendment delayed, that wouldn't happen. It delays applicability until the revised standards are adopted, which is later this year. Am I right or wrong?
Repeat your question.
Don't make me repeat the
Sorry.
question.
Okay, I want to let you repeat it.
I'm
Appendix
looking at
C
your,
standards are immediately applicable. That is correct.
but didn't your amendment delayed something till the end of the year?
When my amendment passes, the bill is no longer tied. So no Appendix Z standards.
The issue that Councilmember White is concerned about would not apply until the new standards are adopted, which is by December 31st, 2026. Is that a correct reading? I may be wrong. I don't know.
No, because our amendment struck that language. So no Appendix Z standards are immediately implemented. The only statutory requirement is all electric.
So then, Councilmember White, what is, if this was delayed, am I right? It was delayed? If it's delayed, then what is applicable here?
I can't say I've fully digested Councilmember Lewis George's most recent amendment. What I have digested are the concerns of the industry and the administration. What the industry told me as recently as after our breakfast meeting this morning was that, look, we have current buildings in design. When you change the rules, we have to go back and redesign. That costs money and creates confusion in real time. They said many of these recommendations may be good, but do it in a permanent legislation because the whiplash causes confusion. It also increased costs. We also heard concerns from some environmental groups about removing the on-site renewables. So rather than introduce confusion for part of this bill that is not necessary, not part of the actual emergency, my amendment keeps the status quo with respect to multifamily housing.
Okay, I'm looking at the written, so do understand, I think everybody's confused by this. Councilmember Louis George's amendment strikes language that would have required covered residential
do not say
projects
rates.
from meeting the energy conservation renewable energy requirements in the bill's updated net zero energy standard when the net zero building code is adopted. So if I'm understanding that correctly, her amendment exempts residential projects. So your amendment, but I did ask her if it affects your amendment, and I think she said no. But your
You asked if
amendment
it
is-
is an overlap.
Hmm?
Her amendment does not do what my amendment does. That was the question I understood you to be asking earlier.
Mr. Chairman,
Can you save me?
I was just gonna name, if most of us are confused, would it be better if we consider this at a future ledge meeting?
The implication, well, my only issue is that the budget is, well, we don't know. I guess we have all types of budget problems. I was asked to get this done in time for budget considerations, which is why we worked hard over Christmas, the holidays to do it, was to get it done so that everyone going into budget was clear, which is due. And residential can't be late because people are they're doing their projects now. And they don't want to be subject to solar requirements. So if we delay it and you're currently designing, you don't know if you're going to be subject to solar or not be subject to solar right now. You don't know if you're going to have to go in front of the GBAC or if you are going to have to go in front of the GBAC. And right now, if it stands, they will have to go in front of the GBAC unnecessarily.
I would just say, I thought Councilmember Crawford's suggestion was a worthy one. Councilmember, are you putting a motion out there?
I will move a motion to postpone to the next legislative meeting.
Second.
Mr. Chairman,
I think
I'm trying to sort this out and motions are being made. To sort, for me, my little brain to figure this out. I think in my absence, a motion was made to postpone to the next legislative meeting.
Yes.
I think a motion to postpone is debatable.
yes,
Is there any debate on that?
yes,
Yes, there's debate?
yes.
But not the underlying question, it's the motion.
I'd like to be recognized.
Yes, I'm being counseled that the debate can be as to the motion itself, not the underlying bill. Councilmember Nadeau?
Thank you. I'm so glad we figured that out. So I definitely understand that this is complicated. And specifically the residential piece. It seemed like Councilmember White's amendment to separate that out for now solved the issue. It does seem like the rest of the work in Councilmember Louis George's amendment is timely and needs to move forward. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't think we should postpone the whole thing today.
All right, Councilmember Fruman?
Thank you very much. I do get on the public buildings piece, the urgency of doing it now. On the question of the residential piece, part of what's been happening during the course of the day today, I think, is that leaders in the affordable housing community have said, pass Councilmember White's, pass the bill and pass Councilmember Robert White's amendment, and it works from their perspective. And the effect of it is on the residential side to step back to the rules that Councilmember White established a month or so back. Now, folks in terms of delay, folks in the affordable housing community have been saying, we need to sort this out, and it may well be that we want to land where Councilmember Louis George is in a permanent, but let's do that in a permanent. So I think we should just get this done and pass Councilmember White's amendment and move forward.
Councilmember Louis George.
I should say, so the compromises in this bill were made in conjunction with each other, right? So the residential and the non-residential. So if we move agreements in residential, we are affecting the support for non-residential. I guess there's back and forth, but from the conversations I've had with both sides of providers and environmental groups, they've said they do not want these changes to, like, for us to, they don't want these changes to wait because they're in the process of creating designs and buildings. I want to note that the permanent is in my committee. So the permanent is going to reflect what is in my amendment, the emergency amendment, which is going to be what's in the emergency right now. Just want to know it's out of the housing committee and into the facilities committee. I think everyone supports the greater flexibility given. And so I just don't think there is a need for a delay here. I don't even know what we're arguing about anymore at this point, because it's like the only thing everybody's caught up on is like this process piece. But the benefit of moving forward with this benefits everybody on the residential and non-residential side. So I don't know what delay would do in this moment, except delay people's design and building. Why would they want to design projects to a solar requirement and then not be subject to that requirement? You get what I'm saying? Logically, why would you, if you are a provider, if you're a builder, why would you want to design your project to a solar requirement and then not be subject to that requirement later on? It just doesn't make logical sense from any perspective. We're talking about flexibility, saving money, and creating some level of what is necessary here, which is some predictability. And we're talking about amending putting it in the right code so there's no confusion, especially as people apply for Housing Production Trust Fund dollars.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to ask just a clarifying question. So what I heard at the breakfast was that the permanent bill had been referred to multiple committees, not just the Committee on Facilities. I know the Committee on Housing had already held a hearing. Is there a third committee I heard through? I believe there's actually two more, is it not? Committee on Transportation and the Environment and Committee on the Whole? Okay. Are all of the committee chairs in alignment?
Speaking for myself, no, because I have not looked at the bill, and so I'm sitting here today confused.
Okay, so I can appreciate us trying to do this for both. I came into this prepared to vote on the government side because we had already had that conversation with the executive and had sort of been prepped for this conversation around voting on the government exemption, period. I think where we are running into an issue here, and this is something that comes up quite often in terms of the business community or otherwise, is how we use emergency and temporary legislation to create, not intending, but sometimes it creates whiplash. We voted on something a couple of months ago, and now we're going to vote and change the rules today, and then we may vote and change the rules 3 months from now. That part is the definition of chaos for business community groups and organizations. And so I'm actually with Councilmember Nadeau if we are all aligned on what the actual emergency, which was around the government projects, let's do that. Allow for the current temporary to remain in place as it pertains to residential, and then allow for the committees, or all four of the committee chairs here, to get aligned. Because the worst thing that would happen is that the end product 3 months from now looks different than what we vote on today. Thank you.
The only problem with that is that you didn't speak to the motion, which.
Yo, so my speaking to the motion is that, while I appreciate what Councilmember Crawford was trying to do here, I'm gonna oppose postponing in hopes that we can move forward on Councilmember Robert White's amendment. Thank you.
Councilmember Parker, did you want to be recognized?
Yes, I've kind of lost my train of thought as well as where we are in the debate. I'd support delaying this. It doesn't seem as though there's anything imminent. And if it's for budget deliberation, given all of the chaos with the federal government imploding our tax system, I have reason to believe this extra 2 weeks is not going to derail things. I would say, though, it would be helpful if we could have a benchmark when we might expect the permanent. We keep alluding to this permanent, but for the bill to go through 3 additional committees, it just seems like a gauntlet that there's no guarantee there will be a permanent. And so what is then the consequence? We're passing an emergency, to Councilmember Henderson's point. We have a temporary that's different, and it just may expire if the permanent never comes, which I think is realistic given everything going on, and that it has to go through 3 committees. So I don't know what I mean. I'm saying that maybe you can consider re-referrals, maybe there could be a joint hearing. I think it would be helpful for there to be a benchmark when that permanent bill would come forward. But I also support tabling this for now. Thank you.
So I'm going to support the motion to postpone because I don't really understand what's going on. And I'm not sure that enough other members understand what's going on. Even though the answer to my question was whether there was overlap between Councilmember White's amendment and the amendment Councilmember Lewis George moved earlier that we approved, I think there is overlap. I think they're both trying to deal with what the effect is on residential. And it would be nice if that overlap got sorted out rather than our voting yes or no on Councilmember Robert White's amendment. He feels somehow that what Councilmember Lewis George has done is not adequate. I'm not sure I could say why. So because this is confused, not that I want to have an additional meeting in 2 weeks, but we could have an additional meeting in 2 weeks. The motion is to postpone to the next legislative meeting, whenever that is. And I think that would get us more comfortable with this. And maybe there will actually be some conversation between several of the committee chairs. Councilmember Pinto, you always want to follow me.
You're very inspiring, Mr. Chairman. So I agree with Councilmember Henderson that I don't think postponing this debate is going to be helpful here. We all have a shared interest in ensuring that we can increase the supply of affordable housing in the city. That is vitally important to all of our goals to build more housing and to drive down cost of housing. And one of the best ways we can do it is making sure these projects proceed. And one of the most consistent points of feedback that we hear as a hindrance to that is lack of consistency in regulation. And so, kind of similar to our last debate, I think I substantively agree with Councilor Lewis George that this might be the best place to go on the permanent, but to create a new standard today from what we did in the fall, only then to be followed by a possibly 3rd iteration in a couple of months, I think is the worst of all outcomes when it comes to consistency. And so I don't think that we should postpone this debate today. I think we should support Councilmember White's amendment and then get back to our commitment for all of these 4 hearings to proceed. And I like Councilmember Parker's point about a possible re-referral or effort to streamline that process so that we can ensure that our rules are sensible and cost-effective and happening quickly so there can be some certainty in the market.
The vote will be on the second round. I was
just going to say, this is on the delay.
What's that?
Well, this is on the motion. The motion to postpone.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say,
this is second round for you.
I understand what round we on.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to just say in general, if folks need more time, then I'm willing to support a delay for more time. But I want to be clear. Residential and non-residential projects will be delayed in having to get GBAC review, which is the current standard right now. So they're going to get delayed because of the GBAC review they would be subject to. And that's just the reality. So whatever the standard is gonna make people subject to GBAC review or not subject to GBAC review. I think that's the difference here that people should keep in mind or be aware of.
Councilmember Robert White, I think this first round for you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not going to support the motion to postpone because the emergency nature of this has to do with government buildings. I think there's broad consensus around that. What we heard from the industry, the affordable housing builders, is not, hey, we want you to come to a compromise. It is, hey, please don't keep changing the standards. Leave the one that's in place until you do the permanent. That's the same thing the administration is asking us. We've also heard concerns from some environmental groups. Delaying this just delays it. It won't fix it. It won't change, the question that's in front of us, which is, are we going to change again temporarily what we just changed temporarily? Or are we going to say this is in place until we do the permanent and work together to get the permanent done? That's what we need to do. So that's what I recommend we do. Thank you, Chairman.
The vote will be on the motion to postpone to the next legislative meeting. All those,
Ask for a roll call.
what's that?
Can we roll call it? I don't want to be
Madam
unsure.
Secretary?
Councilmember Pinto?
No.
Councilmember Pinto votes no. Councilmember Robert White?
No.
Councilmember Robert White votes no. Councilmember Trayon White?
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen?
No.
Councilmember Allen votes no. Councilmember Bonds?
No.
Councilmember Bonds votes no. Councilmember Crawford?
Yes.
Councilmember Crawford votes yes. Councilmember Felder?
No.
Councilmember Felder votes no. Councilmember Fruman?
No.
Councilmember Fruman votes no. Councilmember Henderson? No. Councilmember Henderson votes no. Councilmember Lewis George?
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Chairman Mendelson?
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau? No. Councilmember Nadeau votes no. And Councilmember Parker?
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 5 yeses and 8 nos.
The motion fails. Councilmember Robert White's amendment is before us. Is there further discussion on that? The vote will be on Councilmember White's amendment.
Chairman, I would also ask for a roll call here.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, Councilmember Parker.
Just, Councilmember White, if you could walk, genuinely, I'm trying to understand this. So we have, your amendment is to default to the temporary that is already in place. If there isn't a permanent bill to come, let's say in the next year, then it reverts back to what exactly?
We would need to pass another temporary.
We would need to pass another temporary. And when does this temporary expire?
Mid-May.
Mid-May. Okay, so if we don't pass an emergency dealing with residential, by mid-May, we would need to pass another temporary.
Yeah.
In hopes that there isn't a gap. That's helpful. Thank you. Thank you.
Which would be the case if we pass a different temporary.
I think there was a request for a roll call on that.
Correct.
So the vote is on Councilmember White's, excuse me, Councilmember Tran White, did you ask to be recognized?
No, sir.
All right. The vote will be on Councilmember Robert White's amendment.
Councilmember Robert White?
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White?
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen?
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Crawford.
Yes.
Councilmember Crawford votes yes. Councilmember Felder.
Yes.
Councilmember Felder votes yes. Councilmember Fruman.
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
No.
Councilmember Lewis George votes no. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Present.
Councilmember Parker will be recorded as present. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 11 yeses, 1 no, and 1 present.
The amendment is approved. Further discussion on the bill.
Mr. Chairman, clarification.
Councilmember Parker.
So with this amendment, now the changes that Councilmember Lewis George are proposing are only for non-residential properties
That's correct.
for 90 days.
Why do you say 90 days? There's a temporary that comes with
And
it.
there's a temporary with the hope that there is a permanent to follow. And that the status quo is existing through May, and there will be another action necessary then if a permanent is not passed in time. Is that correct? Somebody? I'm seeing, okay, thank you, thank you.
Anyone else on the bill? All right, the vote will be on the bill as amended. There were 2 amendments that were adopted. All those in favor of the bill as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the bill's approved unanimously. The next measure is STEER Clarification Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2026 PR 26-518. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On February 6th, 2024, the council passed the Strengthening Traffic Enforcement Education and Responsibility Amendment Act of 2024, otherwise known as the STEER Act, which among other things established an Intelligent Speed Assistance Program in the district. The program, administered by the Department of Vehicles, installs and monitors a driver's compliance with intelligent speed assistance systems if the driver was convicted of certain driving offenses. The STEER Act also modernized the district's existing ignition interlock device program. More specifically, the STEER Act amended sections 37 and 38 of the Motor Vehicle Safety Responsibility Act to modify the conditions under which the DMV may suspend or reinstate a driver's license or vehicle registration, respectively. Sections 37 and 38, as amended by the STEER Act, work together to establish driving offenses that require enrollment in the newly established Intelligent Speed Assistance Program as a condition of reinstatement. The new Intelligent Speed Assistance Program was funded during fiscal year 24 in the budget process, and the DMV began working on regulations to implement the program. The updates to the Ignition Interlock Device Program were funded during the FY26 budget process, though funding for implementation is not actually available to the DMV until FY27. When updating the STEER Act's applicability clause to reflect its funding status, the most recent BSA left sections 37 and 38 of the Motor Vehicle Safety Responsibility Act subject to appropriation since funding for the modernized Ignition Interlock Device Program was pending. However, since the DMV relies on section 37 and 38 to enroll drivers in the Intelligent Speed Assistance Program, and those key provisions are currently considered to be unfunded, the DMV has paused the launch of this program until the provisions are funded or substantially similar provisions go into effect to allow implementation of the Intelligent Speed Assistance Program to move forward. This emergency legislation modifies the applicability clause of the STEER Act to clarify the provision of the law as they are related to the Intelligent Speed Assistance Program. They are fully funded, even though those same provisions remain subject to appropriations with respect to the district's current Ignition Interlock Device Program. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I move the deck.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there discussion? The vote will be on the declaration, PR 26-518. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chairman,
Attorney?
you mark me as present, Chairman?
Madam Secretary, you'll mark Councilmember Trayon White as present. And the vote is unanimous. The underlying bill, Bill 26-583, Councilmember Allen,
So moved, Mr. Chair.
discussion. Vote will be on the bill. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Chairman, please mark me as present, please.
Are there any no votes? Hearing none, Councilmember Trayon White is marked as present. The ayes have it unanimously. We'll turn now to temporary legislation. There's no objection. We will move them. I'll move them in block. Residential building permit classification temporary amendment act. Moving it, including the amendment that Councilmember Nadeau moved to the emergency. The short-term disability insurance benefit protection clarification temporary amendment act. Parking enforcement modernization technical correction temporary amendment act. Rhode Island Avenue corridor long-term lease adjustment temporary amendment act. Friends of Wangari Gardens grant temporary amendment act. Net zero modification and preservation temporary amendment act, including the two amendments that were adopted on the emergency, and the steer clarification temporary amendment act. Madam General Counsel, is that clear?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chairman.
And members, are you all clear? I'm going to take silence to mean yes. If there's no discussion, the vote will be on the 7 temporaries. All those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it unanimously. That is going to conclude the business of this meeting. The next scheduled legislative meeting is March 3rd, and there will be a committee of the whole meeting in 2 weeks. The time is 2:46 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned.